Hello and welcome to the Business Standard Morning Show. I'm Ishan Ghera and here are the stories for the day.
रामू दो चाय दे यार।
अरे नहीं यार, एक चाय कॉफी।
We Indians disagree on everything, but we agree. SBI is the banker to every Indian.
SBI का home loan? I agree with you.
SBI is the banker to every Indian.
The desperate appeals and shocking visuals of thousands of Indian medical students stuck in war-ravaged Ukraine are making everyone ask one question. What made them travel so far for education? And the answer is access to quality education at an affordable fee. A medical degree costs over 3 times more in India than in Ukraine. So what can be done to bring down the cost of medical education in India while increasing the number of seats at the same time? Our next report offers some insight.
Even as the Indian government scrambled all its resources and sent 4 ministers to evacuate thousands of students from Ukraine, the crisis has put a spotlight on the condition of the medical education system in the country. In 2019, India had a doctor population ratio of 1:1,456 against the WHO standards of 1:1,000. Besides, they are distributed unevenly between urban and rural areas, with the urban to rural doctor density ratio being 3.8:1. Driven by high fees and a shortage of seats, 20,000 to 25,000 Indian students reportedly go abroad to study medicine every year. Russia, Ukraine, China, Georgia, and Kyrgyzstan are among the most popular destinations. While medical seats in government colleges cost between 60,000 rupees and 2.5 lakh rupees for the entire program, it can cost anywhere up to 1.5 crore rupees in private colleges. About 15.44 lakh candidates had appeared for the national level medical entrance exam NEET last year, of the 16.14 lakh who registered. Of them, 8.7 lakh candidates had qualified. But this does not mean all of them would get to do MBBS, since India had just 88,120 MBBS seats spread across some 590 medical colleges as of December 2021. Just over half of these seats are in government colleges where the fees are affordable. So, some of the 7 lakh aspirants who have been left out despite qualifying NEET look for options in foreign countries. In countries like China, Philippines, and Russia, medical education costs between 20 to 45 lakh rupees. The reason for the high fees is the amount that is required to build the infrastructure to set up a private medical college. Narayana Health Chairman Dr. Devi Shetty wrote in a column in 2019 that it costs about 450 crore rupees and 5 years to build a government medical college, and thereafter costs about 150 crore rupees for annual maintenance. So, what can be done to increase the number of medical seats in India? Mohandas Pai has some answers.
Well, my view is starting greenfield medical colleges is going to take time and is very difficult. You don't get faculty, you don't get a brand, you don't get recognition. Out of 600 medical colleges, 300 are private. At least 150, 175 are more than 10 years old. If the government were to tell them that in the next 3 years, they can double their capacity, we will easily get an additional 20, 25,000 seats. And this will be in good colleges where, you will have very good facilities, including clinical facilities. You will have hospitals, etc. The infrastructure will be there, the brand will be there, the teaching will be there. And this can immediately create capacity of 15, 20,000 seats for MBBS in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think that's what they should do. And also, please remember, starting new medical colleges is not easy. It takes 2 to 3 years. Then you have to get faculty, you have to be far away, you have to have a hospital, etc. It's a very, very expensive proposition. We have to reduce the cost of medical education. For that, brownfield expansion of private medical colleges being there for more than 10 years and government colleges being there for more than 10 years is the biggest thing. We got 90,000 medical seats today. If you add 20, 25,000, that will be very good. And in the next 5 years, if we take it up to 150,000 by both brownfield and greenfield, I think we would have done India a great service. We should also reduce the cost of medical education. For that, we must relook at the norms. For example, in the first 2 years, it is only basic sciences that are taught. The clinical work starts from the third year onwards, where you go to the hospital and work with doctors, etc. So in the first 2 years, we should have a student-teacher ratio or something like 1:15, 1:20, because that is the way you can optimize and reduce the cost. Right now, the entire medical college education is over-designed, done in the 1980s, 1970s norm. Today, with technology and with simulation, you can do things much better and lower cost. So they must have reduced the over-engineering to reduce cost.
Every medical college approved for MBBS admissions should have 23 notified departments, attached teaching hospital, skills laboratory, museums, and hostels for students and interns. At the time of application, institutions with intakes of up to 150 MBBS students annually should have a fully functional hospital with 300 beds that has been operational for at least 2 years. Colleges with annual intake of up to 150 students must have an air-conditioned central library of at least 1,000 square meters, and 1% of the minimum books prescribed must be journals. These are just some of the mandated infrastructure requirements to start a medical college. In November 2020, the National Medical Commission removed the minimum land requirement of 20 acres for general areas and 10 acres for metro cities. So, what are the measures that will make it easier to set up medical colleges? Let us go to Pi again.
Cost of medical education has two components. One is the hospital, another is the medical college. The medical college design specs have to be reduced. There's too much of unnecessary expenditure in infrastructure that has to be reduced, and too much of built area. And the next thing to do is that government must allow district hospitals to be used for clinicals of medical colleges. That means India has 725 districts. There are many places where there are large district hospitals of 300, 500 beds. Why can't they be handed over to the medical colleges to be used for educating their students almost free of cost, so that the cost comes down on the ground, that they will man the hospital, they will run it, they will provide medical care, etc. And they'll also charge a small amount of fee. But with Ayushman Bharat, the insurance program being there, it becomes self-sufficient. So I think if government allows government hospitals to be used by medical colleges as teaching hospitals, it will also reduce the cost greatly.
Every year, lakhs of students leave the country in search of quality education, and their parents spend thousands of crores on their pursuit. So the crisis in Ukraine should serve as a wake-up call for the government, and it should also take a cue from the country which has made quality education affordable.
सब अच्छी दिख रही हैं यार, कौन सी खरीदूं? ये तो वही बात हुई, 4,000 शेयर्स लिस्टेड है, कौन सा लूं? वो तो सबसे आसान है। तुझे 5 पैसा नहीं पता?
अब तो सबको पता है। 5 पैसा पर है 4,000 स्टॉक्स की रिसर्च, टेक्निकल टूल्स और इन्वेस्टमेंट आइडियाज। डाउनलोड 5 पैसा नाउ।
अब तो सबको पता है, investing made easy and rewarding with 5 paisa. Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
Russia's Ukraine invasion has sent the stock markets on a roller coaster ride. It has also sent prices of most commodities, including oil, soaring. Brent crude oil has hit $110 a barrel. So what should investors do amid this upheaval? Jim Rogers, chairman of Roger Holdings, reveals his investment strategies in an exclusive interview with Business Standard's Puneet Wadhwa. The ongoing geopolitical crisis, he believes, is an opportunity to buy. Let us listen in.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Puneet Wadhwa, and today we have Jim Rogers, Chairman Rogers Holdings, with us on the show today.
I am delighted to be here.
Let me start by asking you, what is your interpretation of how the recent geopolitical situation has unfolded and the way the markets have actually reacted to it?
Throughout history, markets do not like war. And whenever you've had a market markets all over the world, which have been very, very strong, very expensive. Inflation is coming back, interest rates are going high, and then you hit a war. So, of course, markets are going down. I have no idea what will happen with Russia, but I suspect that something is going to calm down soon, and then markets will go up again. And that's mainly because now the central banks are worried they will stop raising interest rates so much. And so markets will have a big rally for the more later this year. It may be the last rally. It probably will be the last rally.
How much downside do you see from the current levels then?
Well, I see the way markets are acting. And when you start having panic like we're having now, that usually means we're near the bottom. So I would suspect sometime in the next few days, we will have the bottom, and then something will happen to cause a big rally.
How do the investors navigate this uncertain phase in the markets?
Well, people should only invest in what they know something about. Don't listen to me. Don't listen. Only stay with what you know. I can tell you that I own silver, for instance, and I may buy more silver, but I will tell you that I own agriculture, and I will certainly buy more agriculture. But if you don't know what agriculture is, don't listen to me.
So which commodities are you planning to buy more of? Is it gold, silver, oil, metals, or even agri?
Well, you know, the Indians know more about silver and gold than anybody in the world. And I own silver and gold, and I will buy more if things go down for a while. But will probably buy more agricultural commodities than anything. But, you know, with all of the money printing, we're going to have inflation, and some fundamental things are happening. For instance, we're going to have electric cars. Well, electric cars use 4 times as much copper as a regular car. So things like copper, lead, lithium, there's huge demand coming. Nobody's been opening copper mines for a long time, so prices have to go higher.
Which other asset classes and equity markets do you find expensive?
Well, as I look around the world at markets, bonds are certainly a bubble. Bonds have never been this expensive in history, never in world history, so that's a bubble. Property in many countries is a bubble. New Zealand, Korea, many places. Property is parts of India, as you know. So yes, there are some places where property is not a bubble, but not many. Stocks were forming a bubble. Amazon goes up every day. You know, Tencent goes up every day. Samsung goes up so some stocks were forming a bubble. That bubble has popped for the moment, but I would suspect that it's going to come back. And so some stocks will be a good place to be. But, you know, silver is still down 60% from its all-time high. Those are not bubbles. Sugar, agriculture, most commodities are still down a lot. So that's, for me, that's the best place to be. And that could be commodity countries, such as Russia, Brazil, countries that have a lot of commodities that haven't been too expensive. For me, that's a good place to look.
Thank you, Jim, for joining us today. We hope to see you soon.
Well, I hope we can do it again sometime.
क्या हाल?
मत पूछ यार, फिर से स्टॉक्स में फंस गया।
तो स्टॉक्स के साथ बॉन्ड्स, इंश्योरेंस, गोल्ड में बैलेंस कर।
इसमें बहुत तामझाम है।
तुझे 5 पैसा नहीं पता?
अब तो सबको पता है। 5 पैसा है ऑल इन वन अकाउंट। डाउनलोड 5 पैसा नाउ।
अब तो सबको पता है। Investing made easy and rewarding with 5 paisa. Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
Financial institutions around the world are winding down or suspending business in Russia, following heavy sanctions against it by the West. Global index providers MSCI and FTSE say that these sanctions have made Russia's stock market uninvestable, and removal of Russian listing from their indices is a natural next step. But will India see FPI inflows after this? Watch our next report to know more.
The Ukraine-Russia conflict is creating havoc not just on field but across financial markets as well. Equities, including Russian stocks, have cracked on the bourses, and energy prices are flaring up on fears of choked supply chains. While this may have already eroded billions of dollars of investor wealth, the crisis is far from over. Global index providers MSCI and FTSE, for instance, are proposing removal of Russia from their indices. Earlier this week, MSCI sought fund managers' feedback on the current level of accessibility and investability of the Russian equity market. It has also sought feedback from market participants on the appropriate treatment of the Russian equity market within MSCI indices. This includes the potential reclassification of the MSCI Russia indexes from emerging markets to standalone market status. Previously, FTSE had issued a note highlighting concerns around Russia. Earlier estimates suggest that removal of Russia from these two indices may lead to billions of dollars of outflows from the country, with some portion getting into other emerging markets. A back-of-the-envelope calculation by IIFL Institutional Equities said that if these FPI investments are directed towards India, there could be aggregate inflow of over $2 billion. This is because India's weightage in the MSCI EM and other widely tracked indices will edge higher. As of Feb 25th, Russia's MSCI EM weightage stood at 2.66%, 8th highest. Meanwhile, China and Taiwan topped the list with weightage 22.55% and 15.86%. India has third weightage of 12.25%. To be sure, these calculations are based on last week's weightages. The current inflows, however, may be lower than this as the ongoing market rout might have reduced Russia's weightage. Edelweiss Securities expects the inflows to be distributed in index heavyweights like Reliance Industries, Infosys, HDFC, ICICI Bank, and TCS. That said, analysts caution that it's too early to cheer as Russia's removal is easier said than done.
Given that Russia has already put a ban on selling by foreign shareholders, it looks almost impossible for the index funds to be able to sell the Russian stocks, even if the weightage of Russian stocks is brought to zero in the MSCI EM index. Therefore, actual execution looks far-fetched, and taking any position on this basis is purely speculative. There is also a high likelihood that eventually peace will prevail through diplomatic channels, and the removal of Russian stocks from international indices may not happen at all.
Trust Plutus Wealth's Vineet Bagri says other global headwinds may also restrict FPI flows into India.
The current weight of Russia in the MSCI Emerging Market Index is about 2%. This entire 2% is at the moment illiquid because of central bank actions at both ends, whether it is in Russia or in the Western world. So investors may not really be able to realize this money immediately. We also have to remember that in the last few months, FIIs have been net sellers in India, selling at an average $1.5 billion per week. And even if this money was to be reallocated across the index, at best it would cause a reduction in this heavy selling by the FIIs, may not really tantamount to new buying. In this scenario, we also have to remember that the overall dollar is strengthening against all currencies. You can see that in the dollar index. That is happening primarily because of tightening of liquidity by the US Fed Reserve, high inflation in the US. In light of all this, I don't think there will be any major impact of the removal of Russia from the MSCI Emerging Market Index.
Therefore, even if MSCI and FTSE decide to remove Russia from their global coverage, the step may only restrict FPI selling in India. Investors will therefore keep a close watch on this development on Thursday. That apart, news around Ukraine-Russia conflict, global energy prices, weekly FNO expiry, services PMI data, and stock-specific move will sway the indices today.
अब क्या किया?
शेयर्स में ट्रेडिंग।
तुम्हें 5 पैसा नहीं पता?
ओए, अब तो सबको पता है। 5 पैसा पर मिलते हैं रिसर्च टूल्स, पोर्टफोलियो एनालिटिक्स और इन्वेस्टमेंट आइडियाज भी। डाउनलोड 5 पैसा नाउ।
अब तो सबको पता है, investing made easy and rewarding with 5 paisa. Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
After markets, let us move on to a contagious disease which has been causing worldwide havoc for the last 2 years now. COVID-19's dreadful journey started from China as an epidemic before it turned into a pandemic. And now the third wave is likely to become endemic here. So what is the difference between these terms? Our next report explains.
As India's daily coronavirus cases dipped below the 15,000 mark, the director of All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Randeep Guleria, said the country is currently witnessing the tail of the third wave and COVID-19 will gradually become endemic. On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization had declared COVID-19 outbreak a global pandemic after a rapid increase in the number of cases outside China. COVID-19 was an epidemic in China before it turned into a global pandemic. So let us now understand the differences between an epidemic and a pandemic and when a disease is considered to be endemic. The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention describes an epidemic as an often sudden increase in the number of cases of a disease above what is normally expected in that population in a specific geographical area. Outbreak carries the same definition but is used for a more limited geographic area. An epidemic may result from a change in the virulence of a particular pathogen. For example, a virus becomes more contagious after mutation. Diseases that are newly introduced into a certain area can also cause epidemics. An epidemic of an infectious disease that has spread over several countries or continents is called a pandemic. The World Health Organization declares a pandemic when the spread of a disease is exponential. The deciding factor for a disease to be called a pandemic is not its severity, but the extent to which it has spread. Pandemics can claim millions of lives and ravage economies. It is usually caused by new pathogens, and these could be zoonotic in nature, transmitting from animals to humans. Such new pathogens or viruses infect people easily and spread person to person in an efficient and sustained way. Because the virus is new to humans, very few people will have immunity against the pandemic virus, and a vaccine might not be widely available. Past pandemics include AIDS, the 2009 swine flu pandemic, and the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. Meanwhile, a disease is said to be endemic when it shows a constant presence within a geographic area. The amount of a particular disease that is usually present in a community is referred to as the baseline or endemic level of the disease. For instance, malaria is considered endemic in certain countries. The World Health Organization has predicted that coronavirus could become an endemic virus.
यार आइसक्रीम खाएं? नहीं यार, कुल्फी।
We Indians disagree on everything, but we agree. SBI is the banker to every Indian.
अरे SBI contactless debit card? I agree.
SBI is the banker to every Indian.
Scientists in the US recently released a clutch of extensive studies suggesting that a large food and live animal market in Wuhan, China was the origin of the coronavirus pandemic. That's all we have for you today. For more news and analysis, log on to businessstandard.com. We'll be back tomorrow with the next episode. Thank you for watching.
If you liked this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.